Today, I want to unpack the truth and my honest opinions on Tony Hawk's 3+4, specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2, as that is the version I have picked up. In case you are unaware, you can get the digital deluxe version of this game and begin playing as of now, and the full release, the $50 standard edition, will be out on July 11th, so everybody can hop into this game. And while I am a lifelong Tony Hawk fan, there is actually some details that are both good and bad around this game, because while I want to love it through and through, there have definitely been some hiccups with my early gameplay experience. I am happy to report that it does run good on the Nintendo Switch 2, although not perfect, as I had this game crash on me on camera 2 or 3 different times. There was a third time, but 2 of them during gameplay, like legitimately just the game force shutting out. And I definitely think some things need to be addressed from a patch perspective, and hopefully we see that sooner rather than later. But there is a ton to enjoy here for classical Tony Hawk fans, albeit with some drawbacks to how Tony Hawk 4 is handled, and you probably know where I'm headed with that. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of whether or not this might be a good pickup for you now or in the future on your Nintendo Switch 2 and or any other platform, because it's out on pretty much everything across the board. Switch 1, Xbox Series XS, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, you get the idea. So before we unpack all of this, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to kick this off with some of the positives about this game, because I do have a lot of very positive things to say about it. However, I was going in somewhat skeptical with a brand new studio, Iron Galaxy, being the one responsible for this, as opposed to Vicarious Visions, who was sadly dissolved, I believe, into a Call of Duty support team by Activision Blizzard a little bit before the Microsoft merger, if I'm not mistaken. And anyway, this is a fresh development team. You never know what the mindset is that they're going to come into remaking this game with is, and I can say comfortably that the core mechanics all check out. And while there's occasional wonkiness that happen in these arcade skating type of games, just from a sheer physics perspective, if you ramp off the side of something really weird and crash into a wall at a weird angle, like, you're gonna have some kind of weird camera jerks and things like that. But all the gameplay, in my opinion, from a core development perspective, is top notch. It feels very fluid. It's essentially what you remember from the classic games, but tuned up quite a bit, having all of the more modern vert-to-vert transfer and chain your combos together different ways, and it's more seamless. You do have pretty much the full array of like the underground era games, minus the ability to get off your skateboard and walk around, which that was something that wasn't introduced till Underground 1, and it is a game changer. And hey, I hope we get Underground 1 and 2 remastered in the future. But with this, from its core gameplay loop, it is the 2-minute timer through and through. There is an option to change this, and I will hop into that in more detail when we break down some of how Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4's career mode works. But basically, career is going to be the bread and butter of this game for most people. There is multiplayer supported, and fortunately it has crossplay, but I'm not even going to really highlight that in this video, because I myself am not going to spend any length of time in multiplayer. It's there, it's a cool mode, but what most people do, and what I will absolutely be doing, is going for those 100% runs of all of the various different tasks for each of the levels that you are assigned. So of course, your high score, high combo, 6 score, all the way through skate, and the stage specific objectives and the secret tape, all the stuff that you know from the Tony Hawk franchise is here in full force. And Tony Hawk 3 was a really iconic game, because it was, I believe, the one that kind of kicked it into the next generation. PS2 visuals running 60 FPS. And I do want to talk a little bit about the Switch 2 graphical performance in a moment. But if you remember these games at their core and how you progress them, one of them is going to feel essentially identical and similar, just with some minor changes and upgrades along the way. The other one is going to feel and play very different, and that is Tony Hawk 4, because Tony Hawk 4 was the first game from a gameplay perspective to get rid of the timer altogether, and they opted to instead have you talk to NPCs individually to get the challenge in front of you. This was a very cool gameplay revolution for the franchise, as you always had a traditional 2-minute timer up to this point to complete all of your objectives. And what Iron Galaxy opted to do in this case is just essentially fully push forward that 2-minute gameplay loop into Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, and this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest downfalls of this game, because I have so much nostalgia for what Tony Hawk 4 did in its original form, and this turns it into a Tony Hawk 3 level arcade experience and really does starkly take away from, I guess, the overall enjoyment I'm feeling in the career mode in that game. It is not the same nostalgic type of gameplay loop that I'm getting with 3, even though they play extremely similarly. 4 is not supposed to feel exactly like 3, and it essentially does in this game. And a big problem with that comes down to the level design, because 4's level design was broader in scope and something that was kind of meant to be played a little bit slower and at your own pace. Have fun having some of the trick challenges when you want to just go free skate, but also go knock out the missions by choosing to start them with the NPCs, and that option is totally gone in Tony Hawk 4's career mode. So a big drawback for the overall experience of this game, in my opinion, and I would hope that maybe in the future with an update or some kind of DLC that they bring back traditional career mode for Tony Hawk 4, but I do unfortunately not fully expect that to happen, and I think what we see is what we get with this particular installment, and it's just a big blow to lifelong fans of the series. From a graphical and performance standpoint, I am happy to report on the Nintendo Switch 2, for the most part, it is a solid 60 FPS experience. I do not know what the native resolutions are. I am running it at 4K on an LG CX OLED monitor. It looks fantastic. I'm sure that if I booted this up on my Series X, I would notice some enhanced textures, and maybe some of the blurring in the background that's off in the far distance would render in a little bit clearer on a Series X version of this game. But in all reality, I will say that this is not some kind of stark downgrade to what the other versions look like from a visual performance standpoint, and 60 FPS seem to be a pretty locked and consistent frame rate outside of some hiccups. Not even talking about the game crashes yet, but I did notice sometimes early loading into a level, the initial drop in and a couple of the first camera turns you do, it does seem like there's some noticeable frame stutter. But for the most part, once you get past that, it is a smooth, consistent gameplay experience. And I'm very happy that it visually looks on par with all of the current generations of these games. That cannot be said for Nintendo Switch 1, however, as I have not looked at that in detail myself yet. I didn't pick up that version of the game. There's currently, FYI, no way to buy the Switch 1 version and upgrade it to the Switch 2. You pretty much need to pick which version of this game you want to get right out of the jump. So that's important for you to know. There's not an upgrade path. There might be in the future, or some kind of discount on the Tony Hawk Switch 2 version of this game if you own the Switch 1 version, but at the time of filming, to my knowledge, that is not on the table whatsoever. And I do think that you want to get this on Switch 2 if at all possible. I do actually think that the way it looks and performs, with the added benefit of handheld play, which does look and function very good as well, I think that this is kind of the no-brainer console pickup choice if you're really wanting full, absolute maximum texture quality, maybe more of a native 4K resolution or things like that. Maybe if a frame rate dip occasionally at the load in of a level would really bother you, you might opt to get this on something like a PS5. I will say that the series consoles for Xbox, this is in Game Pass, so if you are a Game Pass subscriber, I think it's a no-brainer to check it out on there. Obviously, PC Game Pass, I don't know for sure if it's on PC Game Pass, I'm pretty sure it is, but that makes it kind of a no-brainer to at least check this out. But if you want that portable play experience that the Switch 2 offers, that's definitely a big selling point in my opinion, because this is the exact type of game that I would like to, when traveling, boot up and hop in and out of different rounds of challenges here and there. And listen, whenever it comes to just having fun in an arcade skating style game, this is a top tier experience in that regard. And I think that having the ability to do that docked or on the go is definitely an upgrade overall. When it comes to the technical hiccups, as I mentioned, the game just straight up crashed on me a couple different times during playing, and once just navigating the menu. And I think I did hit the home button on the Switch 2 to get back to the main screen, and then I went back to the software and it crashed out then. But 3 crashes in 3 or 4, maybe closer to 3 or 4 hours of gameplay, maybe a little bit over that I've logged in it so far. That's not good, and it did seem to be random, so it wasn't like one specific thing would trigger it. There was just an unknown error has occurred, the game totally crashed out, and you had to reboot it from scratch, and it does take a little bit to load up the game in full. So yeah, not the best look right now. Granted, the full release is not out until the 11th. That said, I don't know if things like this will be patched out before then. So if you're very iffy about the overall stability of the game, it does have some problems as of right now, and we will just hope for performance patches to kind of address that stuff. The soundtrack and music quality. Okay, so this is a big point of contention because it has been pointed out that unfortunately less than 20% of Tony Hawk Pro Skaters 3+4's original soundtrack has remained in this current installment, because while there are some standout ones, they did get Motorhead's Ace of Spades and 96 Quite Bitter Beings from CKY. Like they definitely got some big ones. They also missed some very big ones. AC/DC's TNT, which was included in the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater opening, those are missing. There's many other ones that are missing. Just basically account that the majority of this soundtrack is entirely new tracks. And while I understand licensing renewals and agreements are a thing, and sometimes stuff that the red tape can't be pulled off, it is noticeably a different soundtrack overall. And fortunately, there's an easy way to skip through the soundtrack and with your right analog stick just by clicking it in. If you get a track that you don't care for, it's very easy to skip past it. You can also customize your soundtrack and even enable a streamer mode if you are a content creator and you're worried about getting copyright striked in this thing. But yeah, one of the strong points of the originals, not necessarily translating quite the same to the new ones. I'm not against a lot of the new songs. Like, they actually fit the vibe, I would say, overall for the most part of what you kind of want to be listening to with these games. But this is clearly a nostalgia sell for a lot of people, and having the entirety, or let's say 70-80% of the original tracks would have been way more ideal than 20%, which was the unfortunate, or less than 20%, which is the unfortunate number we have now. So whatever the case was, licensing deals didn't get paid or done, and we have essentially a new soundtrack minus some throwback favorites. And I do legitimately find myself enjoying my run more when I do actually get one of those nostalgic tracks that pops up while playing the game. Now from here, we do have to talk about kind of one of the options that you have to try to recreate Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4's intended career mode, because there are game mods that are supported straight from the menu, and you can mod this thing to be essentially a 5-minute timer, a 10-minute timer, or a 60-minute timer instead of the 2-minute timer. Now, this is, I guess, a nice concession if you want to have more time to play in these stages. The problem with it is that the fact that they went ahead and designed everything to be done in 2 minutes, if you throw a 60-minute timer on there and you're not kind of exploring and talking to NPCs like you traditionally were in the original, the gameplay loop doesn't make that much sense anymore, and it kind of just feels like you're cheating in an infinite run, because now you have ample time to find all the skate letters, you have ample time to get all of your high score achievements done in one run. Like, it's pretty much something that breaks the formula of the 2-minute run, because it's designed with that in mind. And that is just something that is unfortunate. While it's nice to have the longer timer to appreciate the larger Tony Hawk 4 levels, it's really not something that I don't think is a true fix for this career mode misstep this time around. So for the price overall at $50, I do believe that this is a fun pickup for a lot of lifelong Tony Hawk fans. If you are somebody who's brand new to the franchise and don't have any level of nostalgia for it, I don't know that it's really worth that full $50 price. And I would say you really have to enjoy these type of arcade style skating games in order to really enjoy this, because that's what it is at its core, and it's definitely being targeted towards people who have nostalgia and appreciate the originals, albeit that's a double-edged sword, because if you're like me and have heavy nostalgia for both 3 and 4, well, you're going to be clearly noticing all the differences in 4, and with some of the big crashes that are happening right now and occasional frame dips, it's not 100% sound in the performance department as of currently, and I am hoping that gets patched out, but of course you will have to wait for that. There's plenty of cool skater options, plenty of cool customization stuff to dive into further, but the core experience of Tony Hawk 3+4 for me is a mixed one, unfortunately. I'm really going to enjoy my time just from going through the different challenges and having fun just doing the chain combos and honestly trying to get my skill level back to where it used to be, because I am very aware, even after playing 1+2 back when that launched like 5 years ago or whatever it was, my skill once again has dropped off a cliff. Like, you really do have to be in tune in order to string together some of those longer, crazier combos. And as you find stats and things and level up your different character stats, obviously that gets a little bit easier as you go. But it was very apparent to me that I'm going to enjoy myself getting back into this gameplay loop and style of gameplay, just with some big complaints along how they handled the soundtrack and Tony Hawk 4 career mode most notably. But let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in Tony Hawk 3+4 at all. What do you think of the footage you've seen online so far? And if you are somebody who's a multi-console gamer, are you leaning towards picking this up on a PS5 or Xbox Series X or S as part of Game Pass or something like that? Or do you think you're going to go with the Switch 2 version at the end of the day? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.